So you want to make more money. Well, isn't it time that you started to invest in property? I think so. Check out this video as I show you how to do it successfully.
Hello, I'm Louise Misiewicz.
And hi, I'm Simon Misiewicz and we're from Optimise Accountants. And we're talking today about property investing. Now, when we talk about property investing, we could be talking about residential properties, commercial properties, HMOs, service accommodation. Wow, there's quite a lot, right? But I think we need to take a high level approach to this particular subject. And we're going to really focus on very much the advantages and disadvantages. So I'm going to start with the advantages, if that's okay with you. I'm always the one who's the
downtrodden one, looking at the cynicism behind everything.
And today I just wanted to be a bit more upbeat. So let's talk about the advantages. The first thing I would say about property investing is that it's an investment that you can control. Look, I have been with IFAs, wealth managers, and I've got good friends who do a lot of investing of money on my behalf. But you know, what I really like is the fact that I can control where my money is. And if I can buy a property, I can control how much money is going into that property, how much I'm kind of taking out of it by making sure I've got good tenants, right? And making sure I have all of that lovely money coming into me. Now, I don't know about you, but if I look at the interest rates, what's the typical interest rate of a bank account right now?
Oh, well, you're looking at a massive, probably 0.5% at best.
Wow, staggering.
Yeah.
That's wow, yeah, awesome, right?
No, it sucks. Absolutely sucks.
That's why I like property. Look, you can make a good return on investment on property if you do it right, between 6 and 15%. And there are typical clients of ours that are making an infinite amount of return on investment because they're able to buy a property, refurb it, then refinance, and then pull all of their money out. And that means that they're getting money for nothing. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a good plan, right?
It certainly does.
All right, so the second advantage of buying property is legacy planning. And the thing, what we all try and do is bring up our children in the best way possible. But I think it's fair to say, I'm sure you agree, Louise, is the fact that we don't know what the economy is going to be like for our son when he grows older. And by having property means that we can at least safeguard him from some of the issues that he might face in a recession. You know, there's a lot of people that are leaving universities, can't get a job. And the fear of not being able to earn any money must have a massive impact on your confidence. And that brings me on to the nice subject, because we're able now to give up our jobs if we wanted to live off property, or we used to be able to do that. But now we've got our own business, which is doing very well, thank you very much. But ultimately, when we talk about property, it was bringing in money for us, and we could have easily given up our job because of the money that it brought in. And that's something that you might want to consider. Could it be property being an additional income, or could it be a replacement of your job? Now, please do one thing for me. Do not give up your job until your property income is more than your job. Because ultimately what I see a lot of people doing is that they give up their job to be full-time in property, things not go right, and then they're back into their job. And they've spent all those years wasting a lot of time. So make sure when you go into property that you wait until the right moment to give up your job. All right, so this time around, I talked about the advantages of property investing, and I'm not the one talking about disadvantages. Finally, I've got a video where I can be positive. So Louise, why don't you give us the disadvantages of investing in property?
Sure, and there are some. Just like with everything in life, there's goods
and there's bads. And the bad
really starts with the fact that you've got to tie money up in property. It might be your money, or it might be money that you've borrowed. But nevertheless, money is most likely going to be tied up in those properties. And if you need money to be liquid and available for other things, then potentially you could find yourself in a really, really dark, difficult place if you've now tied it all up in bricks and mortar and suddenly find you need that cash. That's not going to become liquid particularly quickly, and you need to just be mindful of that when you are looking to start investing. So that's really the first disadvantage that I think you need to be very mindful of. This isn't going to come free.
One thing I would do, just to echo on that point, is the fact that we have seen many of our clients who have invested as in loans to some sort of investor that was hoping that they was going to take a property, refurbish it, refinance it, and then pay back our clients. And unfortunately, that's not gone particularly well, has it?
No, and often what you'll find with particularly deals whereby you might be investing in somebody else's property business is that the one thing you can be sure of is that nothing is ever going to go to plan fully. And so the timescales around when cash might be being able to be pulled out could be substantially further away than both of you might originally plan. Talking about planning, there's also time taken in conducting this kind of business. Things don't turn on literally a day. You've got to plan meticulously when you're buying something, meticulously when you're doing it up, and meticulously when you're renting it out. And you can bet your bottom dollar, I'm afraid, that things are going to go wrong somewhere along that line, so that you're going to have to put, yet more time into managing it.
Plenty of times. Unfortunately, Louise has done her day job, gone to done the stuff with the properties as well, and then not been home to cook the dinner and do the ironing, which is tragic, to be honest.
Something will be very tragic in a minute. Which then leads me very neatly onto risk mitigation.
Oops, oh dear.
So sometimes you may find that there are risks outside of your property business that impinge and impact on your property activities. We've all seen that in the last year. COVID being perhaps one of the biggest damagers to general property investment and also property rental in the last year here in the UK. People may well be looking to rent, but all of a sudden money is taken away from them, and all of a sudden you have an empty, very expensive asset taking money out of your pocket every month, irrespective of whether you're getting money in your pocket for it or not. So you do need to be mindful that there are going to be risks in the process of renting your property. And actually, to assume your property will be fully tenanted 100% of the time is perhaps not realistic for many. So do think about risks that could hit your business sideways that aren't anything to do with things you control. The final thing that I would say about property is that, like any business, it has its ups and downs, and that can affect you from an emotional perspective as well as from a general energy perspective. There have been times where our business of property has absolutely exhausted us, and not just physically but also mentally. And you can have great days followed by the very lowest days when something goes wrong with that business. And unfortunately, like many people, property may not be your only business, and you may not be able to deal with those problems immediately. That will have a toll on you, and you need to be ready with plans and strategies of how you're going to deal with those problems. Never mind the emotional baggage it may cause.
Just to bring that to light, we had a particular tenant, and I'm thinking about 2B1 here, where the tenant in question was a lady who we rented the property to. All of a sudden, her boyfriend came onto the scene, and it's fair to say that he just came out of prison and started to dent holes in the walls of our property. Also, I think he was being physically violent to his girlfriend at the time. There's all manner of issues going on with that, and I think eventually he went back into prison. But when we got the flats back, I think it was fair to say that a lot of damage was caused, but we went through hell on that property.
We have, and equally we've had times when we've had to call the police to come to a property to, quite frankly, check if the tenant is alive or dead. Those are not pleasant experiences for anybody or anybody involved with the tenant, but they are going to happen, and they're possibly going to happen quite frequently the bigger your portfolio grows. So you need to be thinking about all sorts of mechanisms on how you're going to cope strategy-wise with the emotional upheaval of looking after what ultimately is people in your properties.
One other thing I would say about that is the mental health side. You are not alone. And I think you should always remember that. There have been people that have done this longer than you. If you are starting in property and you just have a disaster straight away, do reach out to people, especially who have invested in property, because they can help you out from this is how we got over it. They might give you some emotional positive energy as well as anything else. But NRLA, talk to everyone about NRLA. How can they help someone that was in our situation?
Yeah, so NRLA are a fantastic resource. They're a charitable organisation. You pay a membership fee. They are an association to draw upon as a landlord, never mind as well as a tenant, but they're there for you to help you through perhaps difficult times. They have a lot of experts in their group and they can assist you on everything from legal advice to insurance, as well as potentially for tax. So in terms of tax insurance and tax investigation insurance specifically. They are a superb resource, very reasonably priced, and you really should be looking at, if not them, someone similar to them to have in your armoury.
And I'll put a link to the NRLA below this video so you can go into that. Now, the one thing I would say about this is that you do need a good network. Who do you need to be in your network? And there's a great saying, Louise, that I've heard constantly, and it is that your net worth equals your great network. And I do think that's very true, because if you have people in your reach to pull on and ask them very good questions, they will help you progress. Would you agree with that?
I would indeed. And I would say there's probably 4 different people or groups you need. And I'm going to start with the first 2. Number 1 is a great conveyancing solicitor. You need someone who really has your back when you are finalising and reviewing legals on each purchase. Let's face it, these properties are not going to be a few pounds. They're going to be possibly the biggest things you've ever bought. And you want to be sure you're doing it correctly, legally, and assuredly. A conveyancing solicitor is an absolute must, and you need someone who really understands what they're doing for you. Number 2 is a mentor stroke coach. In property, you are often feeling very alone, and you need guidance from people who have been there and done it, if not once, but perhaps 100, if not 1,000 times. These people are really going to be in your corner, and they're going to give you all sorts of support and advice and guidance on all things to do with your property business.
And I shall finish off with 3 and 4. 3 and 4, I think you should always have a good mortgage broker. Before I get onto the mortgage broker, you would have hopefully know that there is the Property Experts panel, which you'll see a bunch of people that are here to help you along your property investment journey. And typically that is the first Monday of every month. So make sure that you're on to those sessions. It's an hour and a half, that time that you will be thankful for that you've invested. So do get into that channel. Now, talk about mortgage brokers. Why are they important? And just to go on what Louise talks about, conveyancing solicitors, mentors, make sure that they invest in property. It's easy to be very good at your job, but if you don't understand someone because you don't do what they do, it's hard to relate to them. And therefore, sometimes it can be quite cold. It can be professional, don't get me wrong, but it can be quite cold. They're not quite sure what you're going through emotionally, as we've described earlier. So make sure you get people in your network that do also invest in property. Financiers, mortgage brokers, make sure that you get yourself a very good broker. It's easy to just try and do things yourself. Finance, you can go online to find the best mortgage rates, but actually there are many rates that are commercialized and not available on comparison websites, which is only accessible by mortgage brokers. And mortgage brokers will also give you some hints and tips of how to structure your business to make sure that you get the right finance in place as well. And the 4th one, well, I wonder who can help this kind of audience. Do you think a property tax specialist might help?
Oh, maybe. I think that could be a good call.
Yeah, so I think, getting yourself a good investment, getting all that lovely money, and just give it away to HMRC. Or you can get yourself a good property tax specialist to help you minimize tax for you and for your family. Okay, so now we're on to the big juicy subject, which we are famous for, property investing, and that glorious tax as well. So Louise, just curb my enthusiasm for a second. Take it away.
Okay, so let's get started on the perhaps most obvious point. Sole trader versus limited company. There are so many different tax points that really need to be covered on this. It is a series on its own when it comes to this kind of video. But to summarise it, we really need people like yourself starting out or perhaps developing a growing property business to think very seriously and carefully about the implications of running the business either in their personal name or in a limited company. And the consideration of Section 24 is one of those critical points, but only one of the critical points that you'll need to consider. Right at the other end of the spectrum though, Simon, is also inheritance tax, not something most people would immediately jump to when considering property.
Before we carry on, I'm beginning to get nervous when Louise looked at me and said inheritance tax, so I'm going to go away and make sure my life insurance is up to date. But
I've already checked, please don't worry. So from an inheritance tax perspective, you do need to think about the end mind goal. So here we need to be thinking about perhaps who those properties will hand on to when you're sadly no longer on this plane. Also, you need to be thinking about that sooner rather than later, because there are lots of mechanisms to ensure that inheritance tax is a big fat zero if you plan these things correctly. Otherwise, property, I'm afraid, is part of everybody's death estate, and yours included if you haven't planned effectively. But those are just two. Simon, what else is there?
Well, there is actually capital gains tax as well, and if you're thinking about limited company versus sole trader, you do need to think about, again, as Louise said, the long-term picture. There may be a time when you think, do you know what, I need to just sell this property. And most people would say, well, capital gains tax is safe in your own name because you get the exemptions of 12,300, which might be increasing, but you get the annual exemptions plus the CGT rate on residential properties, 18 for a basic rate taxpayer, 28% for a high rate taxpayer. Surely that's okay. Well, we know full well that Rishi Sunak is looking at the capital gains tax and trying to make this huge reform to say, well, should it be more like income tax, which could be taxed at 45% once you get over £150,000, right? So that could be huge. So you do need to think about, well, should I really now think about buying property in a limited company right from the get-go? And as Louise said, start planning as you begin. So capital gains tax is a big subject, and you then need to think about, well, stamp duty, land tax and VAT. There's so many taxes that you need to think about, and that's why you need property accountants like us. Okay then guys, so we talked about property investing, how you can get money into your wallet and not into HMRC's coffers. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a good old thumbs up, and if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the comments box below this video. Don't forget, if you have a tax question that is more strategic, go to our website www.optimiseaccountants.co.uk, use the code U225 to get your 25% discount. Equally, if you're looking for a new accountant or tax specialist, make sure you go to that website and leave your details so we can contact you. Until the next time, my name is Simon Misiewicz.
And my name is Louise Misiewicz.
And we'll see you again soon.